All right. Welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here, and we're excited to talk about employment-based field placements today. So wanted to just welcome you to the University of Michigan and to this conversation. So today we will take some time to share additional information about our team, employment-based placements overall, some of the requirements for these placements, and outline a placing timetable as well. At the end, we will also cover steps in the application process, next steps to be on the lookout for, and commonly asked questions as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Dadswa. I'm a faculty here at the University of Michigan School of Social Work, and I'm really happy to be talking with you today about employment-based field placements in your social work program. My colleague Rachel Naskow also helped prepare this presentation, but is not able to join us today, so we greatly appreciate her efforts as well.
And my name is Talia Ingham, and I am the field coordinator here. While we have the opportunity to share some information today about the employment-based placement process, you may be working with one of our amazing colleagues during this placement process. So we did want to share a little bit about our team and some of the roles in our office as well. So here we have our director, Erin Kong, listed, as well as our assistant director for the online program, Dr. Yanni Robinson. Um, we do have a assistant director for the residential program coming, but do not have that role filled currently, but that is to be determined as well. We've also included our amazing admin team here as well. So we have Celia, Kendra, Sarah, and then as you can see, me as the placing coordinator as well. So all of these individuals are part of this process, but you may be working with different members. So we also want to share just a little bit about the other area of our team as well.
Thanks, Talia. So I'm part of a team of esteemed faculty in the Office of Field Education. Here are the rest of the faculty on our team, and you will have one of us as essentially your professors for your field course. So let me explain a bit more about each of our roles in this process. So in section 2, we'll cover information about your proposed field placement information. But in preparation for that, I want to share some additional information about the different roles involved in the field and employment placement process. So this is clear for you first. So on the top left, the MSW student is obviously your wonderful self that we will look forward to working with and having in field placement. The second person listed here is your field instructor. This person is typically, but not always, employed at your agency field site, and they will need to be a qualified master social worker with at least 2 years minimum of postgraduate experience. This person is going to volunteer their time to provide you with regular supervision and mentoring, and will work with you and your School of Social Work field faculty to establish learning goals and competency-based assignments and activities during each semester that you are in field. Your field instructor will need to provide you with 1 hour of regular supervision each week. So if an MSW is not available in your agency to be a field instructor, sometimes external MSW field instructors might be able to provide supervision from outside of your agency as long as they meet the requirements, your employer is open to this, you have a task supervisor who is at your agency and is willing to participate in your learning experience. Next is the task supervisor on the top right-hand side. So depending on the field site agency that you're in and whether or not an MSW is employed there and able to supervise you, you may also need to include a task supervisor on your team. A task supervisor is always employed at your agency, and they provide day-to-day oversight of your learning when your MSW field instructor is not physically there, or if your field instructor is not located inside of your agency. Typically, the task supervisor is not a social worker, and they may even be someone from another professional discipline, but is very familiar with the work at the agency because they work there, and they can give you guidance while there. This person will have regular contact both with you and with your field instructor and your field faculty to help evaluate your learning and to think about learning goals and responsibilities. Next, on the bottom left now, Your University of Michigan School of Social Work field faculty is someone like myself or another faculty on our team. And they'll be the faculty instructor for all of your field courses and works in the School of Social Work Office of Field Education. This individual will act as basically the liaison between the school and the field site and will be there to guide you every step of the way throughout your entire field experience and help place at the beginning, potentially place on campus EBP students in agencies that we already have affiliation with. We faculty will monitor your learning and will also assign your grades for all of your field courses. Your field faculty is very dedicated to helping you develop the fundamental skills and competencies of the social work profession. So please take every opportunity to connect with them and tap into knowledge and their expertise. And most importantly, if you need support, don't hesitate to reach out to us faculty anytime. Your field faculty and your field instructor will meet with you together at least one time each term to review your learning process. We call this a site visit. In addition, your field instructor will also complete an end of term evaluation of your learning and your performance that will be submitted to the field faculty and serve as a component for your final field grade for that term. Your field faculty is who makes the final determination on your grade or field. Next is the field coordinator in the bottom middle. That's where I'm at now. And only for online students is the online field coordinator, which is Talia here with us today. And she will assist and begin the employment-based placement application process with students located out of state or far away from campus. Talia will assist in meeting with you and your agency, answering questions, solidifying your placement. If an employment-based placement is not a good fit for you, for whatever reason, your coordinator will assist you in exploring non-employment based placement options too. And lastly, as Talia mentioned before, our school social work admin team consists of a whole team, actually, even though it's only one person that's shown there. But that's our body of admin team, and they manage our office email and coordinate all the behind the scenes work for your field experience. They're here to support these steps with the processing of forms and data management, and we really appreciate them very much. So you will occasionally get emails from them too as they're supporting our overall work together. So here's the question and the reason why you are watching this video today. Can I do a field placement where I'm employed? So keeping in mind that field placement is a course in your MSW curriculum, ask yourself the following questions when you're thinking about whether EBP is right for you. So first ask, is my employer open to supporting this opportunity as an educational experience for me within my current role? Or even in another role, but still within my place of employment. So when reviewing this, please note that when exploring a placement opportunity with your employer, it will be important for you to identify if your employer will be open to supporting this opportunity as an educational experience. While you're wearing your employee hat, so to speak, you will also be looking at intentionally carving out space to take on master's level learning roles. And secondly, the second question to ask yourself is, are there opportunities at my place of employment to really develop, engage, and expand experience with the 9 social work competencies, reflecting my MSW pathway learning tasks and skills at a master level above and beyond what I'm currently able to do? And I'll talk a little bit more about the competencies coming up. When you're thinking about identifying who could be your field instructor at your placement of your place of employment, think about the following requirements. A field instructor must be an MSW, have an MSW degree, master social work degree with at least 2 years of experience. They must be willing to provide 4 hours total per month of individual field supervision to you. And if there isn't a field instructor in your agency to provide supervision, MSW, particularly supervision, then an external field instructor can be utilized as long as they meet the program and state requirements and your employer is open to it. You will also need, in that case, a task supervisor at your agency who is willing to participate in your learning requirements, including the site visit and sign off on your assignments for field placement. So if you're not in Michigan, your own state's CSWE, Council on Social Work Education requirements, may be used as additional resource if you want more information on this. for your specific state. You can look that up. And the university will comply with all state licensing and supervision requirements. And one of them is that we require, the state, excuse me, requires that for students doing clinical work, their field instructor must have an active MSW license. So not just an MSW degree, but also an MSW license and be fully licensed, and must disclose their licensure information to our Office of Field Education as part of their application to become a field instructor.
All right, so we want to share a little bit more information about the requirements for the actual employment-based placement application itself. So below we've included some criteria for you to consider, right, in evaluating if this could be a good fit. So first and foremost, that your employer agrees to provide educational opportunities, as we're mentioning, to develop and expand your professional experience to include experiences reflecting those 9 social work competencies of your MSW pathway. Um, we also want to make sure that you identify that MSW field instructor with that 2 years of experience and that is willing to provide 4 hours or weekly supervision, right? Focused on the social work skills and professional identity development. Please note the university will comply with all state licensing and supervision requirements as noted. So, right, if the requirement requires that students doing clinical work, that their field instructor has an active MSW license, that is something that we will request and that we would request that they disclose their licensure information to our office during the process as well. Finally, we also wanted to include that you will submit an employment-based placement application itself, and that your employer, your field instructor, and the field director will all need to review and approve that employment-based field placement application. So there is a section outlining the requirements, but the application itself will be a very important step in this process. So here we've included a timeline based for our students both out of state and we will cover in-state. But I would like to share just a little bit more information, I think, about the timelines, what you can anticipate. So typically about 8 months prior to your field start, I will be reaching out, sending you field orientation emails. This video is included in that packet essentially. And I'm going to invite you to either meet with myself or a field faculty member so that we can start having conversations, I think, about an employment-based placement if you do feel like preemptively it could be a good fit. So about 7 months out, we begin the actual application process, and you'll submit a field application which is different from the employment-based placement application, where you're essentially indicating your interest in your field placement. So if you are interested in an employment-based placement, this is where you would indicate that interest and confirm that in the field application itself. So we would walk you through that process, but that's where you'll officially kind of declare your interest in that. Then about 3 to 6 months out for students interested in that track, you'll begin drafting your application for the employment-based placement and meeting with your employer and with myself and or a field faculty to really review that application and make sure that it's a ideal plan. It's a plan that's going to fit and make sense. So after being reviewed and signed, the application is then sent to our field director for that final review. And if approved, then we kind of move forward to the next steps. And if not approved, right, if there's edits that are required, we can always kind of revise or resubmit if it's just technical things or issues that just need to be clarified a little bit more strongly. But otherwise, if it's no longer a good fit or we're going through the process and it doesn't feel like it's going to be an ideal match, then at that point, we would definitely want to be looking at non-employment-based placement options as well, so we can continue replacing and avoid any delays to your graduation. So that happens around 3 to 5 months out, and then within 3 to 4, once approved, we want to move forward and get all of your new agency paperwork completed. This process can take about 6 to 8 weeks to establish a affiliation. So we definitely want enough time to be able to create that partnership, so that you're able to start field, because until that agreement is signed, unfortunately, you won't be able to start field. So we do need that in place at the beginning of the term with all of the paperwork kind of process. So that's why we take enough time to do this process so that you can be prepared for starting. About 2 to 3 months out, that's when we're solidifying that paperwork, making sure it's processed, and then assigning you a field faculty member if you haven't been working with one at that point. And then making sure that we give your agency and your employer or news site an orientation, right? So we want to make sure that they have the tools and the resources as they're going through this process. So we get you partnered up, and so they have a resource within our school to walk through a typical term and pieces like that as well.
And for students who are in Michigan and closer to campus, your placing timeline is a little bit different, though very similar as well. So, about step one would be about 5 to 6 months before you actually start field placement. You would watch the EBP informational video, which you're doing now, and submit your field application. And on that application, you will indicate that you're interested in an EBP. The next step, step two, students meet with the field faculty if needed to clarify any questions that you have about an EBP and confirm agency eligibility. Next, step three would be student shares a draft of their employment-based placement application to field faculty for review, and then collects employment signatures from the agency, and then return it to the field faculty. That when that process is completed, your application will be sent to the field director, which is Erin Kong, for review. And step four, about 3 to 4 months out, if that's approved, then you would move on to the next step. If not approved for any reason, we would help you pursue on a different and alternative placement that would not be employment based. The next step is about 3 to 4 months out. So step five is new agency paperwork requested from agency. So this isn't really a step that students do too much with, but you want to keep an eye on your agency, ensuring that they receive the paperwork and that they are signing it and filling it out. And then the next final step six is the new agency paperwork is processed by your agency and also signed by University of Michigan, our team as well. And that process, as Talia said previously, depending on whether your agency that you're employed with is already affiliated with us or not, it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks if we don't already have an established communication contract and affiliation, we call it, with them. So depending on whether you do or don't, this process can take longer or shorter, this final step six.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the timeline, but also want to go in depth on the actual employment-based placement application itself. So today we're going to overview it, each one of the sections, and really walk through considerations, walk through elements that you're going to want to be aware of when you're taking this to your employer, when you're coming to meet with us, just to start formulating, right, is this plan possible? So we want to make sure that you have all of the tools as you're going into this process.
So Talia, if I can just add, so this is not all of the steps for your field application. This is only for your EBP application. So these only students who are interested in doing an employment-based placement are doing this application and going through these steps. All students have to do a field application regardless of that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And now Talia will talk about those. Thanks, Talia.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yes, that's super, super important. All students will do that field application. But this will be an additional application if you're interested in that EBP. So the first section that we have is really the general student information, right? Here you list a little bit about your contact information, your track, your pathway, as well as your projected schedule, which terms you're applying to be in field for. So when selecting the semesters, you will please submit your, write them out specifically, right? If you're going to be spring, summer, 2024, if it's going to also be fall, winter, just so there's a clear image of how long you're planning and intending on being in that employment-based placement. So the second section of the application is the proposed field placement information itself. So in the job description box, you will be able to share a brief description of your current position, which our field director will consider when reviewing to see if you're able to count any of your current hours towards that field experience, right? This section also provides a space for you to confirm your employment supervisor, your field instructor. So we do want to name again those roles and how they kind of interact. Some student employment supervisors and field instructors will be the same individual. That does happen on occasion, while others may have a field instructor from another program or even potentially that external field instructor from outside of your agency. Um, if you will be working closely with your employment or task supervisor, we sometimes refer to them on a weekly basis, I would say, or if you have a field instructor from outside of your agency, as previously mentioned, we will encourage your employment supervisor to participate in meeting with your field faculty and reviewing your field assignments for each term. So here we've included that list of roles that we had previously. Again, just to clarify, the field instructor being that MSW supervision and competency development, that employee or task supervisor being again that maybe employment supervisor that you currently have who can add to. And really we find although not always MSWs have great insight about working closely with you and providing feedback. So we do want to include them in the process if they're able to join and they do have that, I think, regular interaction with you as well. Um, Again, we have kind of our team, and I know depending upon if you're in state, if you're out of state, it may depend who you're working with through the process. Whereas most of our field faculty will work with those in-state students through some of the placement process. Well, I work with mostly our online students who are further away and outside of the state of Michigan for kind of this introductory period before we get you assigned a field faculty member in our office. And then our admin team is going to be processing that 6 to 8 weeks that we're talking about. They're helping us process that paperwork in a timely manner to try to have you start on time and moving all of those pieces behind the scenes. So the third section of the employment-based placement application is an opportunity to briefly describe your proposed field placement tasks, functions, and responsibilities. So essentially what specific things you can pull from your job description that can be applied towards field, or a brief description of tasks if the opportunity will be separate from maybe your current program or role at your agency. So some of your job description may not be able to count towards field. So this is a follow-up to that initial position description to begin to identify more of those master's level opportunities. So we kind of start with the job description and then we move to kind of the field role and the field description and just kind of a brief overview here of what that could look like. Again, some of those tasks and those responsibilities. So here we also capture your weekly schedule essentially. So this is a snapshot of that proposed schedule and the times where you're planning to intentionally again carve out that learner role. So please remember to include both your employment, your field and course hours as indicated, as this will be important for your employer and our field director in being able to see an image of your proposed plan as well. What is this going to look like on a weekly basis? So we do request, right, putting an E for employment, an F for field, and a C for course time, as you can see kind of in our mock example here. And again, that just gives a really nice snapshot when we're talking about, I think, actual dedicated time towards field and creating this plan between your employer as well. So in the fifth section, this is one of the most important aspects and most important areas of the application process itself. So here you're going to be creating those competency connections. In these sections and these boxes for each one of the 9, we invite you to list 2 to 3 practice behaviors or justifications for how you will be developing each one of the competencies. This will be something you continue to practice in each term and will be integrating your experiences and the competencies throughout the program. So this is kind of an initial step, really teasing out how this could overlap with those competencies. So this should be tasks that you and your agency can anticipate you completing during the term that really demonstrate your development of the competencies. So for example, we may say in the second competency, engage diversity and difference in practice. An example might be attending a DEI training, right? 1 to 2 times per year and utilizing supervision to discuss those principles of diversity and difference in practice. So it's a tangible example of being able to go and develop that competency. And this will be important in really ensuring that you will have enough master's level opportunities during your field experience.
Let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like, because you will need to fill that out as you're doing this application, and you really should talk to your field instructor, your MSW at your agency on each of these competencies so that you can get a clear idea of the most important part of field education is that it provides opportunities for you to do master's level work that connects to these 9 social work competencies. So the Council on Social Work Education, CSWE, is our accrediting body, and field placements must allow you opportunities to practice these 9 competencies while you're at your employer if you're doing an employment-based placement. If you're not already familiar with these, don't worry. You will be very soon. And that's why we're covering this topic in this presentation. All MSW students across the country are trained with these in mind, and all students in every pathway in our program will be practicing the same competencies in their field placement. However, how they do them will be different. So, for example, an interpersonal practice pathway student might assess a patient who has come into the ER or ED to determine if they need a psychiatric hospitalization stay, while a management and leadership pathway student might assess by creating a needs assessment um, to identify gaps in training. So both students are practicing the skill of assessment, right? But just in a different way. These 9 competencies will be central in your assignments for field. So they're important to keep in mind while you're considering doing an EBP and whether there's enough opportunity for master social work competency development at your current place of employment.
Yes, thank you, Christina, for that. So the final section of the application or the final section that you'll fill in truly is the navigating difference role confusion between field placement and employment. So field is a class and educational experience which differs from employment expectations. Here we've included a section to review and plan to navigate some of those potential role confusions that can occur between the 2 hats of both employee and learner. Here you will specifically indicate if you will be counting hours in the same department or through a different department, as well as describe how field will be new and different from your employment tasks, that expansion that we're talking about. You will also want to include information about how your employment and field supervision will differ, even if you're accounting opportunities in the same department, for example. So will supervision be provided by the same individual or by a separate field instructor, for example? How will you plan to separate out the weekly supervision hours to review the MSW competencies, right? This is essentially an overview of all of the previous sections, schedule, field instructor, tasks, and really highlighting again how it will, what it will look like, right, when we lay out this plan. So those are some of the questions maybe to keep in mind when you're thinking of this section and areas to highlight when you're starting to fill it out. So although a very brief section, this is a very important section as well. So we do want to name the 7th, which is change in employment status policy. So while the application to be considered for employment-based placement is almost complete, there are a few final considerations for students interested in exploring this placement option. If approved for an employment-based placement, this will tie your educational experience to your employment. While this can be a good fit for some students, It also can carry additional implications if shifts occur within your organization, supervision, etc. So if a change in employment status does occur, we will work with you to find a non-employment-based placement as soon as possible. However, it is possible that this could result in a delay and could affect your projected graduation date. So if an employment-based placement does not feel like a good fit after reviewing maybe the application, some of this process, and reviewing this with your employer, please let us know as soon as possible so we can begin reviewing non-employment-based placement options for you. The final section of the application truly is the signature portion. So in order to share your application with the field director for final approval, we will need a completed copy with your employment supervisor, field instructor, director, and your signature. Please note that as mentioned previously, one individual may cover more than one role, so please prompt those individuals just to sign all of their respective fields when completing the application.
So let's hypothetically say that you identified a field instructor and also possibly a task supervisor if needed. You watched this video, you filled out the field application and indicated that you're interested in an EBP. You filled out the EBP application, had it all signed by your potential field instructor and also possibly task supervisor and field site director. You've also met with someone on our team to discuss it, and it was approved and signed by our field director, Aaron Kong. Then you're halfway through the process since your EBP application was approved. So now what? Next steps are the fully signed and approved application will be emailed to you and your agency, and completion of agency paperwork will be done. This is not done by students. This happens between our Office of Field Education and your agency. So there's two potential ways this could go in terms of next steps. So if your employer is already legally affiliated with our School of Social Work, then our Office of Field Education will confirm that the documents we have on file, such as our program form and field instructor application, are current and up to date. And if it's not, send it out for updates if needed. And then once all of that paperwork is received and processed, we will connect your assigned field faculty to you and your agency. So the alternative is if your employer needs to create a legal affiliation with the School of Social Work because they don't currently have one, then please note that this might take 6 to 8 weeks, this process just by itself. So if this is the case, we will send the necessary paperwork to that agency, the place where you're employed, and create a legal affiliation with your agency through paperwork. Once all that paperwork is completed and signed by both the School of Social Work and your agency, your employer, we will connect your assigned field faculty to you and to your agency, and then they'll have a new agency site visit, which is essentially an orientation for your field instructor and or task supervisor. It's not something that students attend. Step 3, after you've completed the EBP, would be that you attend a pre-field orientation, and that is via Zoom. And then after that, you will attend field and start your field placement.
And I will note the pre-field orientation happens just for context, very close to the beginning of the term itself, and is kind of the kickoff for the term where you'll meet with your field faculty member, review the term, kind of review the Canvas site, and the assignments for the term. So that is what that looks like and where it kind of falls in your personal timeline as well. So we've also included a couple of frequently asked questions as we've gone through this process and navigated it with students. So there's a couple we want you maybe to be keep in mind or review when thinking of this process. So will I need to submit an application if my practicum experience will be in a different department? And the answer is yes, because we want to make sure that we have a plan, right? As you're navigating, I think, those employment hours and this other role in the same umbrella. So we do need kind of a formulated plan that your employer is on board with and the other department as well. Do I need to submit a field application if I'm interested in an employment-based placement? Yes. So all students will need to submit that initial field application, and if interested in employment-based placement, also fill out the employment-based placement application we reviewed today as well. Can I count more field hours than I'm registered for field credits? You can count up to the amount of field hours you are registered for per term. Um, will my placement be all set once the EBP application is approved? As we were kind of naming in the previous slide, it depends based off of whether we're already affiliated and have that partnership, or if we need to create a new affiliation or partnership. So for those that we have the current partnership with, we are most likely almost done with the process after that application is approved. If no additional paperwork is required, the placement will be solidified at that point, and a field faculty assigned if one has not been already. The new affiliation agreements and the new agencies, you're about halfway there, right? We have the approval, we know where we're going, but your agency will need to submit their new agency paperwork, which, as we named, could take up to 6 to 8 weeks. So we do want to start that earlier as possible, and attend that new agency orientation meeting as well. So, are you ready to begin the employment-based placement application process? So here we've included, again, I think the next steps, right, for our in-state students and our out-of-state students. So for those residing within the state of Michigan, um, be on the lookout for the following steps, right? Discuss the requirements of that with your or of the application with your employer and with your MSW field instructor, whether in your agency or outside. Await notification to submit your field application. Again, that initial application all students will do at the time when you're invited. And in there, you're going to indicate that employment-based placement interest, right? You're going to confirm it in that application. The third step, submit a draft of that application to your assigned field faculty for revision and review, and then collect signatures and send your completed application to your field faculty for a director's approval. For out-of-state students, I'll encourage you to discuss those requirements, right, as we mentioned, with your employer and with that MSW field instructor. Await notification to connect with your field coordinator or field faculty member to discuss this further. Submit your field application and indicate your interest in the employment-based placement at that time. Submit the completed employment-based placement application to your field coordinator or field faculty if you are working with one, and meet with your field coordinator and your employer together. And very similarly, once you submit your draft, it will also be sent for revision to our field director for final approval. And then that approval will move forward with the paperwork if needed at that time. So thank you so much for attending to learn a little bit more about employment-based placement applications. It's been a pleasure sharing a little bit more information. And as you see, we've listed our contact information for our office, both the email and the phone number. And for students who are connected through Slack, please feel free to follow up with any questions through that Slack channel as well, or feel free to email our office and we can also answer questions.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video today. We look forward to answering all of your questions about employment-based placements. Please feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to assist. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.